Hello. I promised you guys a video and then I didn't have time to make it, so I'm gonna make it for you right now. Number 9 was tricky. Number 9 says, Isa wants to paint her room purple. Her mom bought 1 gallon of purple paint that is 30% red paint and 70% blue paint. Isa wants to add more blue paint to the mix, so the paint mixture is 20% red and 80% blue. And then the question is, how much blue paint should Isa add? Test the following possibilities. Okay, so here, like in our original bucket, we have 3/10 of a gallon of red paint and 7/10 of a gallon of blue paint. When I add 2/10 of a gallon more blue paint, I don't have a gallon total of paint anymore. Now I have 1.2 gallons of paint. So the reason this is tricky is because when you're adding more paint, you're adding paint not only to get more blue, but you're changing the total, okay? So this is kind of how I think about it. I think about it like, okay, so blue paint, total, and then percent. And I'm gonna use a calculator for my percents, or maybe you can use a calculator for your percents for this problem. This is pretty tricky. Okay. So for my blue paint, for the first one, when I add 2/10 of a gallon, I now have 9/10 of a gallon of blue paint because 0.7 plus 0.2 is 0.9. My total is 1.2 gallons, so my percent is 0.9 divided by 1.2, which I believe is 75%. Okay, so there's that one. If instead of 0.2 gallons, I added 0.3 gallons, I have 1 gallon of blue paint, 1.3 gallons total. My percent is going to be 1 divided by 1.3, which is not 80%. I don't remember what it is, but it's not 80. If you pulled out a calculator, you could figure out what percent that was. And then for the next one, 0.4 gallons, 7/10 and 4/10, 7 and 4, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, right, 1.1. And 1.4. And again, 1.1 divided by 1.4 is not 80, but I believe it's getting closer. It's like 78 or 79%. It's pretty close, but it's not exactly right. And then the last one, I really should make this a little taller now. If I add half a gallon, I end up having 1.2 gallons of blue paint. No. I have 1.2 gallons of blue paint, 1.5 gallons total. And if we do the math on this one, 1.2 divided by 1.5 is the same thing as 12 divided by 15. And if I take that down, that's 4/5, which is the same thing as 8/10, which is 80%. So this one is 80%. So Isa should add half a gallon of blue paint into the purple to get the right color purple that she wants. And then part B says write an equation to represent the situation, then solve your equation and answer the question. Let X represent the amount of blue paint Isa should add. All right, so we want, okay, this is not my equation. This is just me like thinking in my head. I want 80%, which is 80 over 100. And I want that to be the blue paint, the gallons of blue paint divided by the total gallons. okay? So in my equation, I'm gonna do this, 80 over 100, and the blue paint, I started with 7/10, and then I added like different amounts. So I'm gonna call this X is the amount of blue paint I should add. So I'm gonna call this 7/10 is what I started with. And when we're writing the equation, like you're pretending you don't know that the answer is 5/10. So this is like a different way of solving it. Okay. So 7/10 plus the amount of blue paint that Isa added is the amount of blue paint total in my mixture. And then the total gallons is 1 gallon. And then plus the amount of blue paint that Isa added. Because when Isa's adding paint, her added paint adds to how much the blue, like the total amount of blue paint, but it also adds to the total amount of paint. So this right here, there's lots of ways to write it, but this right here is one way to write an equation that represents this situation. And that's why this problem is tricky, because X is showing up in two places. The amount of blue paint Isa's adding is changing two things. It's changing the blue paint and it's changing the total. Okay, and then if we check that the amount of paint Isa should add is a solution, so what this is asking, this is my equation. We found that the answer was this half a gallon. So instead of X, I'm gonna write half a gallon. So I'm replacing the X with half. And let's see what happens. 7/10, this is 1 2/10, divided by 1.5, and we just did this math over there. That really is 80%. Okay. That's a tricky one. If you are able to like do this part, but this equation with X in two places you're still unsure about, that's okay. If you're not sure what happened in that table, come see me, because the table is just like an organized way of keeping our thoughts, whereas that equation is definitely tricky. Okay, cool.